Hello, I'm Craig DeRoche, CEO of Family Policy Alliance. Marriage and family are among the greatest gifts God has given any of us, but when we reject his gifts, hurt and harm inevitably follow. I know they did in my marriage and in my life. If we look around our communities, it's evident that we're witnessing nothing short of the decay of America, folks, and it's from the inside out. That's the most distressing part. Kids are underperforming in school. Violence and drugs flood our streets, and abortion is on the rise, while fertility rates are plummeting. For too long, efforts have treated the symptoms of that, like I just gave you, rather than the so what, the why, the root cause of why these metrics might all be going the wrong way. The breakdown of the family screams the numbers and leaders like we have on the show today. While exceptions that exist, the data is clear that communities with struggling families face the greatest challenges. Families is the root indicator, the strongest predictor of a child's success being raised by a married mother and father. Imagine that, not your education, not the job you have. Today, we are talking with Aaron Baer, the president of the Center for Christian Virtue, based in Columbus, Ohio. His organization has just released a new study, folks. It's going to blow your hair back, that I believe you'll find fascinating on these issues. And it's just the first year of the study. And we'll get into that. That's part of what I'm excited about. Aaron's a dear friend, and he served as the founder of the Ohio Christian Education Network, a network of 180 evangelical and Catholic schools, the Christian Business Partnership, kind of like a chamber of commerce for Christian businesses in Ohio, and is the host of CCV's weekly culture and politics podcast, The Narrative, which you all got to check out. Aaron, welcome to the show. It's such a privilege to have you on here today, brother.
Hey, Craig, thanks for having me. I just got to say, the only thing I would disagree with that you just said is you said it would blow your hair back. Step one is you got to have hair, and neither of us are really qualifying for that. But beyond that, that was a spot on, man. Spot on.
See, and remember, you guys remember, I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and he's from Columbus, Ohio. So there's going to be a little bit of that back and forth as we go back and forth, and he gets his digs where he can. Congratulations on your national championship this year today.
Exactly. Well earned, right?
So give us an introduction to the work at Center for Christian Virtue. Tell us what you're up to. Not this study. We'll get to the study the next question.
Sure.
Tell us about your work.
Yeah. Just like, I think one of the greatest gifts in the country today is the Family Policy Council movement, Family Policy Alliance. And grace of God, I found my call in this work, first at Center for Arizona Policy, but now at Center for Christian Virtue. And we're Ohio. CCV is Ohio's largest Christian public policy organization. And so we primarily, our mission field is the Ohio State House. But what I always say is there's really four things that move public policy today and move the law along. First and foremost is the Holy Spirit. We never want to deny the power of the Holy Spirit. But then it's either ideas, money, or pressure. And at CCV, we're a 501c3 organization. We don't get into the money game that much. And quite frankly, even if we tried to, I know a lot of family policy counselors are 501c4s. But if we tried to play the money game, we couldn't compete with the power of the left and corporate America. And so we really compete in the place of pressure and ideas. And a big part of the way we go about that is bringing people together, organizing people, educating them and motivating them to get involved. And so you kind of walked through two of our three pillars at CCV of our Ohio Christian Education Network, which is the education space, Christian Business Partnership, which is the marketplace. And then third and final is the Church Ambassador Network, which is about 4,500 churches here in Ohio that we work with. And so that's the core of what we do and who we are. And God's blessed it with some good success here recently.
Well, it's great, and I wanted you to do that because you're not just bragging on yourself. You're not even bragging on yourself. You're saying who you are because I asked you, but what you're doing is you're representing the whole movement, and you're represented very well, folks. Ohio, remember Ohio, that state that Barack Obama easily won, twice. It was a blue state. They said it was a purple state for all those generations, and then they said, well, maybe it's now a blue state. And people wonder what happened because it's been a reliable red state. Folks, it was the social conservative vote, mostly Christians in that network. We know that there's a lot of Islamic and Jewish and a lot of other people that just have a sense of right and wrong in their heart that Jesus gave when he created them. but they're not aware of him yet. But we lead that in Ohio. It's become such a consequential organization in that transformation of Ohio. You've heard of people go from zero in political involvement to becoming our vice president, like J.D. Vance during that time. A lot of exciting stuff going on, and it's because of the innovations of the Center for Christian Virtue, CCV, and they're here. And Aaron is an innovator, and he's here to talk about why the state has changed, why families have gotten more interested. It's because the organization, 4,500 churches, he just said that they serve, 180 different Christian education organizations, and they go in there and they came out with this family structure index that if you don't know what the problem is, you're not going to be able to fix it, right, Aaron? So tell us what led to this index and what you came out with this month.
Yeah, there's really two things that brought this about in Ohio, and for us, and both are pretty significant. I'd say the first, I've been sort of saying that in many ways this is 14 months in the making, and I'd also say in many ways it's maybe 20 years in the making for me personally. I say 14 months because about 14 months ago, Ohio, much like Michigan a few years ago, passed one of the most radical abortion initiatives in the country. We now allow abortion up to birth. It's just, we're going to have 30,000 dead children in Ohio every year because of this abortion amendment. And so when we were looking at what can we actually do to save lives in Ohio, our ability to do certain things legislatively is now restricted. And there's still some things we can do, and we're going to continue to fight there. But really, we saw that actually the best path that we can do right now, save lives today, while also putting the state in a position to eventually repeal or curb this abortion amendment, is restoring the family. 81% of women who have abortions in Ohio are single moms. Those trends track nationwide as well. And it just makes sense, right? If a woman has the support at home, and financially and emotionally and just in terms of childcare, she's far less likely to see abortion as a good thing or something that she wants to have. And so for us, restoring marriage in Ohio became of preeminent importance. The second part of that, though, in relation to the abortion issue, Craig, is that we did an exit poll after the abortion initiative passed here. We called it our vital signs report, and one of the things there was a lot of things that were shocking and jarring that came out of that. We saw that 1 out of 3 weekly attending churchgoers voted yes on the abortion amendment. And that's even, for all of our, skeptical Christians out there on polling. We even took out the mainliners, for goodness sake. We just tried to get the Catholics and the evangelicals, and we still saw 1 out of 3 weekly attending churchgoers. But the other thing that really jumped out, sort of shocking from that report, was that a better indicator for voting no on the abortion amendment was being married compared to having kids. Which doesn't make sense when you think, especially you look at what our pro-life apologetic has been, is we've been saying, hey, if we can just convince people that an unborn life is a baby, they'll oppose abortion. But I think what we've seen is that a lot of folks have the Bill Maher position that, yes, it's a baby, but I'm okay killing it. And a better way of securing a pro-life view and a pro-life vote is the biblical sexual ethic, and addressing that. And so for us, we view this marriage push we're making here in Ohio and what we're trying to inspire across the nation through this state rankings and the Family Structure Index, is how do we go about really both saving lives today and putting the state and the nation in a place to save lives long term. And that's just the pro-life side. And the funny thing about it, Craig, is I haven't even gotten into what the report itself doesn't talk about abortion at all. But that's the pro-life aspect of how we got here, and there's a lot more to why we did this report.
But that's why you do the report, right? That we're trying to folks confounding a lot that's been attributed to a lot of people doing the same thing over and over again. It's a definition of insanity, expecting a different result, right? And we do that as a culture. And Aaron, you've heard me say this before. One of the most powerful things I learned when I was becoming a Christian, I was in a Christian alcoholic rehab. and they told me that my drinking wasn't my problem. My whole life, everybody told me I had a drinking problem. My wife, my parents, my friends, my bosses, right? And they said, no, not in the Christian understanding of this. It's your solution. If you would come to Jesus for your fear and your anger and your shame and your guilt, and he removed those, you wouldn't need to get drunk and you wouldn't need anything else, and fill in the blank, right? So I wouldn't need an abortion. If I was thinking about getting drunk, somebody else might be thinking about getting an abortion that day. And that's what your study really is meeting Ohioans and saying is, you want to know because you want to serve. And that's what makes our movement different. We want to help that woman at the intersection when she's on the road and she needs help because she's trying to have a solution that involves someone who's not her child. We want to have the policies in place so she makes a better decision. And obviously, we want to protect the civil rights of that unborn person. And it's amazing, the breakthrough. So I don't want to linger there. You can comment on what I just said, but I'm going off what you said is profound.
No, Craig, that's so spot on, brother. Because I do want to talk about the broader, the sort of 20-year focus of what the Hope in a Future report is. But I really want to go back to what you're saying here, because this is, I think, for the pro-life movement, this is the key for us right now. We have to recognize what the pervasiveness of the sexual revolution and what it's done, and how it's made. And I'm going to take off pro-life friends here. So whatever, like how it's made abortion essential for culture. That's the reason why Planned Parenthood can do these egregious things, can literally sell baby body parts, can tear kids apart limb from limb, and they still get people when it's just on abortion, right? When it's just the abortion amendment, they still get people to vote for it, right? And we could talk about misinformation and lies, but a lot of times, quite frankly, I feel like we use all of that to justify our failures, right? As opposed to asking the bigger question of why are we in this spot? And when we understand what the sexual revolution has done, which is it has disconnected the sexual act from the consequences, the results of sex, which is children, right? And this loops in. I'm going to make our evangelicals now, like me, we're going to make us uncomfortable. This loops in things like contraception. This loops in a whole bunch of things. When we disconnect sex from the consequences of sex, and we idolize and build up personal autonomy over everything else, for the culture, that tells them that they have to have abortion in their back pocket. Because if something goes wrong, if someone makes a mistake, as they would say, or if someone, which again, how is the consequence of your action a mistake? That's just the natural, if this, then this. If I drop, this baseball here, it's going to fall. That's what gravity says. If you have sex, you're likely going to have a kid. When we disconnect those things, abortion becomes a necessity. And until we deal with that sexual ethic that makes abortion not matter to those people, or that they don't feel like they need to have it for themselves or for their daughters or things like that, we're not going to get a majority of people to vote against these abortion amendments. At the same time, just big picture, from an electoral standpoint on the pro-life side, voters are actually okay with politicians being pro-life, right? I still keep saying you can not show to me a single national candidate, Senate candidate, governor, president, who has lost because they were pro-life. Voters are actually very cool with people being pro-life. When it's just the abortion issue and they're put all abortion or no abortion, they're going to choose on whole right now, all abortion. And until we deal with that fundamental effort of why they feel like having abortion is necessary, we're not going to be able to abolish abortion, which is where we want to be.
In your study, and we're talking with Aaron Baer, he's the president of the Center for Christian Virtue in Ohio. He's one of the 40 state family policy councils that we talk about so much on this show that makes our alliance different than others. Other movements, a lot of times they get their leadership from a national office and they bring that out and they say, we have our answer. And this is what's best for the country. But at Family Policy Alliance, we tend to get our ideas from local communities that work their way up through counties toward their state family policy council. We try to make the states the laboratories of democracy, where a lot of our policies like Save Girls Sports or Help Not Harm are passed in dozens of states before they reach the Congress, and they're demonstrated to actually protect religious liberty. You'll know it by its fruit, to bring about better results for families. And we're here talking with Aaron because they've issued a study called the Family Structure Index, and this is just a powerful, powerful index. We want you all. We have links here on this show. We want you to be involved with your local family policy council. So if you live in Ohio, we want you to join the Center for Christian Virtue right now, today. Do not delay. We'll have a link for you to do that. If you live in another state, we want you to join them. And if you're in one of the 10 states where we do not have a family policy council, states like Illinois, Mississippi, Nevada, we need your help. And we want you to raise your hand and click on there and let us know how you can help us form a family policy council so they can do wonderful things like this. Find out the difference of why people in Ohio, pro-life, red state, churchgoers would be voting for abortion, for example. And Aaron, you found an example in Youngstown in your study where marriage decreases. I'm sorry, showing that more marriage decreases in parenthood, the more child poverty increases in Ohio. Explain that to us. It goes right to what you're talking about, in that we might, as advocates and people that want to help people, might have been missing the point here, and you're trying to help us find the point.
Yeah, well, Craig, that's spot on. And what I would just say is, this is kind of what I said. This report is 14 months in the making, also 20 years in the making. And Youngstown is exactly why I would say it's 20 years in the making. I'm from Warren, Youngstown, right, Northeast Ohio. One of the most struggling places in the state, in the country, really. That's where the East Palestine train derailment was, the J.D. Vance was at, all that kind of stuff. And when I grew up in Warren, we had a population of around 50,000. Today, Warren has a population of around 35,000. Right, this is steel country. This is where everyone still remembers Black Monday in the 1970s, that where 5,000 folks lost their jobs in Youngstown in a day. And basically since that time, and especially in my lifetime, when I left Warren 20 years ago, when I graduated high school, we've had leader after leader come through the state and say, we're going to revitalize Ohio, we're going to revitalize these communities, all of this kind of thing. And what we see across the country is that communities like Youngstown, like Warren, like Dayton, like Toledo, all of these areas, they continue to struggle and they continue to shrink. And actually, nationally, our fertility rate is way down, right? We need a fertility rate around 2.1. Nationally, we average about 1.7. Ohio's huddling around that average, if not a little bit lower. And so the question is, why is that? And we keep throwing all this money at economic development, all this money at poverty, all this money at education, at drug use, and it's really not getting significantly better. And to your opening here, Craig, it's because we try to address the fruit of the problem and not deal with the root. And that's not to say we don't need to have, all these social safety programs and all that. But if we're not talking about what the root is, and what Brad Wilcox, the author of Our Hope in a Future report and the sort of the innovator behind the Family Structure Index that we released here, what he just shows in an overwhelming way in his research and in his book, Get Married, that came out about a year ago, is that behind every social ill in the state is broken families, right? You go to a public school and you ask, those teachers that are a failing public school, and you ask them what's going on, and they will tell you there's no parental support at home, right? We know that this is something that's funny. When we show this report to people, the core of it, of broken homes being the driver of these things, isn't surprising. I think what a lot of folks are surprised about is the scale. So like in Ohio, 47% of our kids are being raised by their married mom and dad. So over half of our kids do not have their married mom and dad at home. I mean, that is and we know this as family decreases, as family support and stability decreases, government has to increase to replace the value of mom and dad and the impact of mom and dad, and that government can only do so good on that kind of stuff. And you just see, the poverty report you just mentioned, like Youngstown has 68% of kids are born into single parent households, right? And they have a 50% child poverty rate. And there's actually a straight line down. You track marriage rates for kids born into married households to poverty, and you can see all the way down New Albany, Ohio, a town outside of Columbus, has 91% of kids born into married households and only 4% child poverty. And so this is the key that unlocks all of these things. And if we're not talking about marriage first, when we're talking about these problems, we're not serious about actually addressing them.
It's amazing to me, and it's heart wrenching too, because I was in the legislature a long time ago when I did have hair that could be blown back, Aaron, 20 years ago. And we would talk about these issues, and people weren't listening. I don't think the pain was great enough then. One of my beliefs is people didn't. After the hangover that we have of the civil rights movement in the 60s, everybody thought that doing what somebody else wants you to do is like a civil rights thing. Like if I want a Lamborghini, it'd be like my civil right would be to get a Lamborghini, like everybody, and then there would be a movement. Give everybody, give them a Lamborghini, right?
Yep.
And we don't get to the root of these things that every kid ever born, and that includes any of you that have been listening to me right now, if you can think back, because I still have young kids and I have nieces and nephews and I have others that I interact with, all they think about all day, every day is you as their parent, their mother and their father. And if you aren't around your kid, and if you haven't been around your kid for 3 or 4 years and you're the dad, guess what they're still thinking about all day, every day? You. Whether you're in prison, whether you're dead, whether you're just not available, whether you're out high that week, and all the rest of the stuff. And it is heart wrenching. It's hard to talk about these things, Aaron. We all have it in our families. We've all personally, some of us have let down and broken up our own relationships. So I'm not judging other people in here, but I'm saying unless we can have these conversations like this study has, to say that the damage is the root damage of why we're underperforming in education, why our suicide rates are up, why our school shootings are up, why our obesity rates are up, why the impoverishedness and the rest of the stuff is people didn't learn the fundamental, and it's just frankly obvious. If you go through this life as a team, Aaron, is what this study's showing, teamwork, that's what our country, that's what this world has been set up for. You're going to be better off. If you try to do it on your own, you're going to be worse off. And for some reason, we've allowed the other side to say that's a bigoted or a Christian statement. But isn't that kind of a tactical and a strategic almost conversation to your index that you put out that we should be letting people know about as well here?
Yeah. Again, I think that's exactly right, Craig. I'll say, it's the reason why we don't talk about abortion in the report is because you don't need to agree with us on abortion to be able to look at these numbers and say marriage matters. Right.
Right.
That's the big picture here. But I will say too, I think what you're hitting on here are two big things. One, we talk about this a little bit in the report. Brad really hits this hard in his book, Get Married. But one of the things we show in the report, everyone's talking about mental health, mental illness, all that kind of stuff today. We actually show it's like 72% increase of depression of kids not raised in a married household, right? Like this is, and actually Brad's study shows the happiest people in society today are married moms, right? Followed closely by married dads. And this is where, for Christians, we need to be leaning into the public policy debates, because we have to recognize that our worldview has the benefit of being true. And what I mean by that is that we recognize that we're more than just sort of autonomous machines, that we are people with souls, right? And so just directly, if I keep on filling my car up with gas, right? My car is always going to run and do what it needs to, right? Because it's a machine, right? We see this with welfare programs. If we just keep giving people stuff, we expect they're going to do really well because they're machines, right? That's actually the way we kind of look about it. And it's kind of how it has to work when you're dealing with a massive bureaucracy. But that's not who we are. We're not machines. We're people with souls. And so if all we're doing is being given stuff, it's not going to work. And this is the problem with a lot of the public policy debates, is that what we end up trying to do, and again, we kind of have to do it when we're dealing with the scale of how do we manage millions of people. When you're getting into really detailed needs that people have, if you're just trying to treat them as machines, and I don't think most people are doing that consciously, but that they kind of end up getting to that space, you're going to end up failing. It's actually one of the reasons why, we put out this marriage report, and one of the first things people will come to us at, the media or other folks will say, oh, so do you support, because you know how hard it is to, the challenges single parents are facing, all that. Do you support universal pre-K, or do you support expanding childcare subsidies for single moms and things like that, or for young families? And we say no, actually, because what the data shows and what we know is true fundamentally is the best thing for a kid, the thing that a baby needs more than anything, or a child, is to be with their mom. So if we start trying to structure society around things that are actually not best for that kid, we're going to be in trouble. Does that mean we don't try to help single moms who are in that situation, a bad situation? Absolutely not. But I think, Craig, what we've seen and what we really want to be driving with this, and we do think there are certain things government can do to be encouraging marriage and help folks in low-income communities, but what we really want to be sort of called to task here is a lot of our entitlements, a lot of our welfare programs today are built around what I call is the exception, not the rule, right? And the rule is marriage is what's best for you. So how do we encourage that healthy behavior, as opposed to saying, well, yeah, but some moms can't X and some moms can't X and some people can't do this. By all means, let's have caveats and things like that to help those, but let's not build the entire program around that exception and ignore the bigger rule, which is marriage is what's best. And that's what's actually going to fix this problem long term.
Folks, it's a joy to have Aaron Baer on with me. He's the president of the Center for Christian Virtue in Ohio. He's one of the 40 state family policy councils. He's one of our national leaders, and they've published a new study called A Hope and a Future. Aaron, where can people get a copy of Hope and a Future? Tell them how to come to you directly for the print copy and the digital copy now.
Yeah, so it's all just ccv.org /hope is where you can get the Hope and a Future report. Again, that's very specific to Ohio. It also links to at ccv.org /family index, the family structure index, which ranks the 50 states based off demographic and fertility data on what states have the healthiest family structure. And that's every state is included there. You can see what it is and even get a little bit of deep dive on what states can do to make their family structure healthier, build a healthier family culture. We're really, really excited about this, and just the beginning of a really long conversation we're open to have in Ohio and across the country.
Folks, this is one of the most important conversations we can be having in America right now. We know that anecdotally. Now we know it objectively because of the great work of the Center for Christian Virtue in Ohio. You can check out where your state is right now. If you click on the link and you can get in there. We want you to be involved with your family policy council as well. That works right there alongside Mr. Aaron Baer and the Center for Christian Virtue with substantially similar programs. They work on the Church Ambassador Network together. Get your churches, your local church involved. They work with Christians Engaged because, folks, guess what? We want you to vote in 4 elections every 1 year, not 1 election every 4 years. The school board elections, the city councils that you didn't think mattered, well, guess what? That's where all this chicanery found its way into our policies in Ohio and throughout our whole country. So we want you to tune into the show. We want you to share this with your friends, but we want you to have hope in our future, folks, because people are waking up. They're starting to recognize that the answers, we knew them all along, that it's marriage. And we want you to download this report. We want you to start raising that up, folks, positively as an objective solution for what ills our culture in America, marriage, while we work on our own individually. Thank you so much for being with us today, Aaron, and sharing this. Just a wonderful resource with the whole country.
Hey, I appreciate it, Craig. Appreciate you. Appreciate all of our colleagues across the country, and excited about what is to come.